The three inalienable rights acknowledged by the Declaration of Independence are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are rights acknowledged as granted by the Creator in order that we may live virtuous lives in our roles as Imago Dei, image of God, and American citizen. Without a Creator, there is no other granting authority for the rights, cannot be self-granted, and granting them to ourselves means that they cannot be inalienable. The rights thus would have no intrinsic meaning, but only an extrinsic one, which makes those rights not suitable for pursuit, specific protection, or even mention in the Declaration of Independence. The right to happiness and the right to pursue happiness are two entirely different things. Neither infer the other. The writers of the Declaration meant that we had a right to pursue happiness, but only by all lawful means, and that the pursuit was always a matter concerned with virtue. Within the context of the postmodern worldview, happiness is most often conflated with pleasure. The psychological foundation of the postmodern worldview, narcissism and subjective emotionalism as the arbiter of truth, demand a lack of any meaningful distinction between them. The ultimate problem is they are not the same, and their relationship is fractional, pleasure being only one peripheral element in the achievement of happiness. Let's explore the nature of happiness, especially as it applies to human nature and the natural law. Humans are unified beings, mind, body, and spirit, in a single entity that defines their personhood. Human nature lies along a spectrum of this unity, from a lower, more animal nature to a higher, more rational nature. The lower or animal portion of human nature is that which relates to the physical world, instincts, emotions, physicality, social behaviors, mating. The higher or rational portion of human nature pertains to the immaterial, rational thinking, imagination, creativity, speculation, prediction. Human nature figures prominently in the achievement of true or lasting happiness. In the postmodern worldview, the term happiness is equated with pleasure. If I do something pleasurable, then I am happy. Some people drinking enough alcohol will eventually experience pleasure with the neurological responses. But are they happy? Another person takes a restricted drug and achieves euphoria, which is always pleasurable. Are they happy? Still another person rapes an underage child and experiences sexual pleasure. Are they happy? A psychopath kills someone and experiences the pleasure of their own dominance over life and death. Could we say that they are happy? It's clear that pleasure itself cannot define true or lasting happiness because pleasure has but a single utilitarian purpose, while true or lasting happiness is a state of being. Almost all classical literature defines happiness as a significantly greater state than pleasure. In Aristotle's time, pleasure was accepted for what it was, utility. Happiness, however, was a whole different thing. The Greek word for happiness is eudaimonia. It was considered by Aristotle to be an end goal for one's life, achieved by virtuous living, reaching one's potential. Aristotle believed that happiness was defined as follows: the ultimate end and purpose of human existence is not pleasure or virtue, but the exercise of virtue, the perfection of human nature, and depends on the exercise of reason. Continued. Depends on moral character, where the virtues of courage, generosity, justice, friendship, and citizenship in one's life, and requires intellectual contemplation, the ultimate realization of rational capacities. Later philosophers did not wholly agree with Aristotle. Kant, for example, rejected the notion that happiness was impetus for moral action. One person's happiness could be another person's misery. Further, Kant held that the only way to know what actually served to produce happiness was experience. Rousseau believed that happiness was not a utopian dream at all, but was attainable by a wide variety of people in various conditions. John Locke distinguished between imaginary happiness and true happiness, inferring the distinction between subjective and objective happiness. Locke was first to coin the phrase pursuit of happiness. If happiness is a state of being, then the process of achieving its ultimate expression must be more than just an expression of pleasure. It must be rational, and therefore of the higher human nature. Virtue is required because the rational requires us to look outside our own narcissism. If our moral character is also part of the process, then the notion that happiness is lasting, like Aristotle's end goal, must be one of the ultimate goods that define the virtuous and moral life. Pleasure, on the other hand, and in and of itself, is simply a utility, even as it may be one of the peripheral elements in the achieving of happiness, and must mostly appeal to our lower or animal nature. It generally involves the visceral, the instinctual, and the emotional. Only because of our higher or rational nature can we attain true or lasting happiness. Turning toward the Christian worldview, drawing the assumption that scientific evidence and logical methodology reveal that God created the universe, we can rightfully call him the ultimate good, the source of all goodness. If this is true, as both Saints Augustine and Aquinas attest, then our ultimate and true happiness would be in God alone. If one does not believe that God created the universe and therefore exists, then there is no basis for true or lasting happiness. We are simply born of inexplicable and unfathomable chance. We live a meaningless, almost parasitic existence, and then we pass away, lost. We know the spectrum of human nature, and we know the nature of true and lasting happiness, distinguishing it from pleasure and defining it as a state of being involving our higher or rational nature. Now we ask, how then do we rightly pursue true and lasting happiness? If true or lasting happiness is a state of being and one of the ultimate goods, and reason and our higher nature is required to achieve it, then we must have a process imprinted upon our DNA that makes it possible. The answer is not complex. If we recognize that God is the creator of the universe and the source of all good, then accepting that truth and accepting his Son Jesus as our teacher and Savior, and we pursue his will with the dignity granted us by our creation as Imago Dei, recognizing all others also as the Imago Dei, our true and lasting happiness is assured, even during our lifetimes.